August 19th, 1692. A huge crowd gathers to watch 5 witches being hanged. Somewhere in a small Massachusetts town called Salem.
People traveled from all over. It was the most exciting thing that was happening. So there was a spectacle element to it.
The Puritan colony of Massachusetts is in the middle of a panic over suspected witches. Neighbor accuses neighbor, and family members turn on each other in an orgy of paranoia and violence. The witch scare had begun earlier that year, in January. Young women have mysterious fits, thrashing in bed and acting possessed. Accusations the girls have been attacked by witchcraft quickly tear through the colony. The local ministers believe that the devil is at work.
Wild, the worst of all evil.
The court takes action to protect the town. All witches shall be prosecuted and hanged. This is the 3rd day of executions that summer, but today's are unusual. For the first time in Salem, 4 of the accused are men. One is a Puritan minister. Another is a prosperous, church-going husband and father named John Proctor.
John Proctor is the first man to be accused. He's a tavern keeper, he's on seemingly good terms with everyone.
He's a pretty successful sort of fellow, and very much a God-fearing Christian.
That an upstanding Puritan churchgoer like Proctor is about to hang shows just how fevered the witch hunt has become. He is the last to die that afternoon.
To be the last one to be executed on a particular day meant you had to watch everybody else be executed.
Proctor protested his innocence and his unwillingness to die before the gallows, that he was an innocent man.
Eight more will hang that summer. Then, almost as quickly as it had begun, it is over. Puritan authorities come to their senses and halt the trials. A blanket of silence falls over the stunned community, and any writing or publication about the terror is officially banned. The location of the execution site vanishes from any records.
I really feel the Salem witch trials are the sort of first large-scale government cover-up in American history, hundreds of years before Watergate.
That cover-up is launched in the fall of 1692, when the governor of the colony, Sir William Phipps, bans any writing or publication about the witch hunt. Books were reported burned in Harvard Square.
He's essentially trying to bury the fact that innocent lives were lost here.
Even today, in a town made famous by the witch trials, vital information is missing, and questions lie unanswered.
There's about 900 documents in all, but there are huge gaps.
It's amazing what we don't know.
Yeah.
Now, a group of historians has uncovered new information about the witch hunt.
The executions, the people who had...
Richard Trask, Marilyn Roach, Tad Baker, and Ben Ray have spent their lives researching the witch trials. They hope to finally answer its most enduring mysteries.
History of the Salem witch trials by...
What caused the girls to have thrashing fits and act possessed?
Fits that no one can diagnose.
Why had the accusations of witchcraft spread so quickly, ripping through the colony like a disease?
It begins to spread from something small to something large. It's going to happen to you.
And where was the location where those witches were so publicly hanged?
Can be seen. We had the narrative, but we didn't know where the narrative came to its most vicious conclusion.
Finding the long-lost hanging site could write a final missing chapter in Salem's history.
Salem, the witch city. People don't realize that this is built on the death of 19 Christian martyrs. I think it's really important that this site be found and identified
The place is worth preserving as a memorial to what happened and what should not have happened.
And there were victims from Salem.
Richard Trask runs the Peabody Archival Center. He grew up here and is a direct descendant of executed witch John Proctor.
The location of the execution of the accused witches, which should be such an important place, was kind of lost to history.
Now, this is
One book about the trials did escape the Puritan censors. It was published in London 8 years after the hangings.
More Wonders of the Invisible World by Robert Califf. He was a man who thought injustice was being done and he was going to record it. Civil magistrate.
Califf's book gives even more importance to finding the lost hanging site. He reported that immediately after the executions, the bodies were dumped nearby in a shallow grave.
This is Califf talking about the execution. And he was cut down, he was dragged by the halter to a hole or grave between the rocks, one of his hands and his chin, and a foot of one of them being left uncovered.
If the hanging site can be found, it's possible that remains of the accused witches still lie close by in unmarked graves. Inside a secure vault at the Peabody Archives are surviving documents from the time of the witch hunt. Although publishing books about the witch trials was illegal, clues that explain why the witch hunt started are hidden within 300-year-old court records and fading church documents.
This is, where the most important or valuable things are located. And it includes
Richard Trask's daughter, Elizabeth Peterson, is studying the family history being passed down from her father. She wants to know why her long-ago relative, John Proctor, was accused and hanged.
He's an older man. Generally people think of witches as women.
Well, John Proctor lived in Salem Farms, a little below Salem Village, but he went to the Salem Village Church, and Reverend Parris was the minister of it.
Minister Samuel Parris plays a key role in the start of the witch crisis.
This is the minister's record book, and it's in the handwriting of the Reverend Samuel Parris.
Are these original pages?
The original pages.
Wow.
March 27, 1692, and he says, "The devil hath been raised amongst us, and his rage is vehement and terrible."
The Reverend Parris left more than just words in Salem Village.
Very few people even realize this is here.
This is the site of Parris's former home.
This is where the story really starts. This is the beginning of the Salem witch trials. Ground zero.
The shocking events that happened here 300 years ago lit the flame that began the witch crisis. It led to the death of Elizabeth's relative, John Proctor.
Absolutely.
The Puritans had arrived a generation earlier in 1626, seeking to build a pure Christian utopia in the New World. The immigrants found themselves in a frightening and often hostile land.
These are people who advertise themselves as a flock in the wilderness, and they very much are. They're on the edge of a frontier, and the dark is really palpable.
When Samuel Parris arrives as the new minister, Salem Village is anything but a Puritan utopia. It is filled with refugees from a long-running Indian war, and property disputes pit neighbor against neighbor. Parris preaches that the devil is responsible for Salem's trouble.
Stand against the wiles of the devil.
For the women who share his home, his wife, 9-year-old daughter, 11-year-old niece, and Indian slave Tituba, the devil waits in every corner.
Imagine these young girls. They have their father, Samuel Parris, storming around the parsonage, up in his study, writing these fire and brimstone sermons saying, God is terribly angry. Satan has been let loose in our country. Repent for your soul burns in eternity in hell. This is scary stuff for a 9-year-old, right?
In January, the young girls begin to act strangely and complain of agonizing pains.
They say that they're being bitten and choked. They're convulsing in various ways. Their bodies are pretzeling into different postures. One of them runs into a fireplace. They will shriek, and they will not be able to stop the shrieking.
For Reverend Paris and the other ministers in the colony, there is an obvious diagnosis: witchcraft. Tens of thousands of suspected witches had been executed in medieval Europe.
The big problem in the 17th century is that witches are real. Everyone believes in witches. Ministers, university professors know that they exist.
The first ominous proof of a witch infestation in Salem now comes from Paris's own slave. For reasons we'll never know, Tituba admits to being the devil's agent and casting a spell on the girls in Paris's home.
It will be her confession that will really make the crisis take off, because once she says, I am practicing witchcraft, it's very hard for anyone to deny the existence of it in the community.
What actually started all this was inside this parsonage.
It's right here that Tituba says that she's first accosted by Satan, who forces her to afflict the girls.
The stage has been set for a plague of witchcraft, unlike anything the New World had ever seen. Witches were traditionally female and lower class. But John Proctor is an upstanding businessman and churchgoer with a wife and 16 children. So why is Proctor accused of being a witch?
We picked this waistcoat on him, basically in keeping with the English fashion of the time.
To help figure it out, a team of historians and costume designers are recreating his 17th century world.
I thought Puritans always wore black. Obviously, these are not black clothes.
Too many 1950s movies, I think.
Oh, yes, and Thanksgiving pageants. Black was an expensive color.
I know what the clothes are supposed to look like, but John Proctor's financial standing at the time, what would that really have been like?
John was doing really well for himself, but he didn't have any sort of official standing in the town, which would be a class signifier at that time. But he had a very successful farm. But John's first two wives were lost to dying relatively young.
In childbirth.
His second wife definitely died in childbirth, and so this Elizabeth is his third wife. She's in her 40s. The primary driving factor of John and Elizabeth's marriage would have been economic necessity. Now, that being said, by all accounts, they actually had a very solid partnership. She was middle class. She enjoyed some material wealth because of John's success.
But success won't protect them. The Salem witch hunt is unique. Even the wealthy and pious will find themselves accused. In late February 1692, the Proctors and much of Salem village watch with fear as more girls are stricken with bizarre fits. One of them is 13-year-old Anne Putnam, whose family connections make her stand out. She's the daughter of Thomas Putnam, an ally of the Reverend Samuel Paris.
The Crucible is about Anne Putnam.
The whole armor of God.
He's a man whose father had been the most wealthy, most important member in Salem village, but he only inherits a small portion of that wealth and position. He's a fellow with a chip on his shoulder. He's got a large family, lots of mouths to feed.
Like Paris, Thomas Putnam blames his misfortune on the devil.
He's ready, willing, and able to look for Satan and to help root him out and to find the culprits in Salem village.
Suspected witches are investigated by the Salem magistrates. On March 1st, Anne Putnam tells the magistrates that Samuel Paris's slave Tituba has cast a spell on her.
I saw the apparition of Tituba, which did torture me by pricking and pinching.
Anne Putnam also accuses two other women in town.
They named Tituba and the two neighbors, Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne.
Like Tituba, neither Sarah Good nor Sarah Osborne have money nor many friends in the village.
They're pretty much the first three people you would have voted off the island anyway.
If the accusations had stopped here, we probably never have heard of the Salem witch hunt. But But that March, the afflicted girls turn on a very unexpected target. A well-regarded church member, 71-year-old Rebecca Nurse.
Rebecca Nurse was a Puritan saint. She was a very devout woman, a beloved grandmother, and a staunch pillar of the community here.
The Putnams had long feuded with the Nurse family over property boundaries. In March, Thomas Putnam files a complaint on behalf of his daughter against Rebecca Nurse. Some historians suspect Putnam is fanning the flames of the witch crisis for his own ends and may secretly be telling the other girls who to accuse.
Thomas Putnam seems to play a role as the man behind the curtain here. Does he suggest names to them?
Someone's been suggesting, if not directly, whispered comments as to who would be bewitching the girls, so they know names.
John Proctor watches the accusation of Rebecca Nurse with growing anger.
He didn't believe in witchcraft, or at least he didn't believe in what was happening in Salem Village as witchcraft.
Soon after the possessed girls accuse Rebecca Nurse, Proctor's own servant Mary Warren begins to have fits. Whatever the reason for Mary Warren's fits, Proctor wants them to stop. He takes matters into his own hands.
John Proctor says that he's going to beat the devil out of her. He thinks it's all nonsense. He doesn't believe it.
Such a beating is nothing unusual. Women were dominated by men in Puritan New England, with children and servants at the bottom of the social ladder.
What would life have been like for a servant girl?
There was a lot of work that needed to be done. So you would be sun up to sundown, constant, I would think.
The Puritans didn't have a sense of teenagerhood the way it's like a special life stage right now.
In The Crucible, Arthur Miller's play about the Salem witch trials, John Proctor has an affair with one of the first young accusers, Abigail Williams, and that leads to his undoing.
That is definitely not what happened. The affair between John Proctor and Abigail Williams is a figment of Arthur Miller's fevered 1950s male imagination. The real John Proctor was around 60. He was not in his mid-30s. And the real Abigail Williams was around 11. She was not a 17-year-old temptress.
I go 17.
But does Proctor have an affair with his own servant, Mary Warren?
It's like a Pocahontas situation.
John Proctor's a very complex character, but you do kind of have to wonder about his relationship with Mary Warren.
Worse.
Yeah, because
it's
it deals
still
with
considered.
There is even a question.
Yeah, so the Crucible.
Either way you look at it, it's still considered.
The Crucible is about John Proctor's affair with Abigail, but in real life, she's not, she's not Winona Ryder, a young, sexy woman. She's a little girl, okay?
How old was Winona Ryder then?
Huh?
How old was Winona Ryder?
In the movie, she's probably like in her 20s.
Isn't she like 50?
They said she was 17.
The movie was made in the 90s. But yes. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Talking about the Crucible and Pocahontas. Oh, yes. So the movie was made in 1996. It's based off a book, it's based off of a play created in the 50s about the Salem witch trials. So, is it a little bit dramatized? Yes, it is.
So it's been very distorted.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. It's like a Pocahontas situation. Pocahontas was actually a little girl. She did not fall in love with John Smith. Like, same thing.
So what probably happened is the play distorted like what really happened.
Yes.
And then once it was turned into a movie, then it got distorted even more.
Could be. I haven't seen the play. What?
So, wait. Oh, yeah. So I'm guessing that they're gonna have, like, actual magic in this movie, and it's not, that's definitely not gonna be real.
I don't think so. It's about the Salem witch trials, but there's romance, where romance doesn't need to be.
Oh, so it's not cool drama, it's...
I don't know, we'll have to watch it.
Soapy.
That there might have been some sort of sexual relationship going on, some kind of sexual abuse.
And is that fueling Mary's accusation and Proctor's rage when he beats her? Later, 20-year-old Mary testifies about pulling Proctor's spirit into her lap. And Proctor, in turn, calls Mary his jade.
Now that's a really unsettling term. It really kind of implies a woman of low stature or ill repute.
Whatever the relationship between Proctor and Mary Warren, that winter and spring, Salem's power structure is turned upside down.
If you look at the age of the accusers, it's somewhere around 16. So there's definitely a sense here of youth running the show and of a sort of celebrity status granted to the girls.
What drove these girls to accuse people that they'd known, in many cases their entire lives, as witches, which was a capital crime during this time period? That's really the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Several of the female accusers are refugees from the Indian Wars and have seen family and friends butchered.
The Indian Wars play a huge role in that so many of the girls who seem to be afflicted by witchcraft have been touched in some way by tragedy, have lost family members, have themselves been refugees from settlements.
At first, John Proctor's beating works. Mary Warren apologizes. She pins a note on the meeting house and suggests the other girls are lying.
And so Mary ends up recanting, and then a lot of the other afflicted girls go after her for recanting because it seems to undermine their authority.
They begin to turn on her, and she realizes, my gosh, I'm going to hang.
So instead, she accuses Elizabeth Proctor, her husband John, of being witches.
It's a key moment. Mary Warren clears her name of suspicion by accusing her masters. John and Elizabeth Proctor are charged with witchcraft and thrown in jail. Accusations of witchcraft now spread like a terrible contagion. From the Paris house, deep into the Puritan colony. And it's about to get worse. To figure out why, historians Ben Ray and Marilyn Roach are working with graphic artist Edmund Earle.
This is a copy of the original manuscript.
Ben has spent decades poring over 300-year-old documents, attempting to map how the accusations spread.
So not only do these documents tell you, say, where it would happen, but it says when, and from that you can chart the accusations as they happen through the course of the year.
Exactly.
There had been witchcraft scares in New England before, but nothing approaching the violence of that terrible summer in 1692. Ben believes that mapping the spread of the panic reveals clues that explain why Salem spun out of control. Edmund builds a three-dimensional visualization of the witchcraft outbreak.
So Ben, February 29th, you see the first three.
Yes.
And if I play, you'll watch the days progress up at the top, and you can watch as the accusations spread out.
One reason the witchcraft accusations spread so quickly, the magistrates permit the use of something called spectral evidence. Evidence that only the accusers can see.
And it's essentially the idea that if the bewitched can see something, that something is real, even if the rest of us can't see it. So that if one of the bewitched girls says, this particular suspect is stabbing me at this particular moment, and that is not obvious to anyone else in the court, it still remains true and incontrovertible.
In April, when suspected witch Bridget Bishop is examined by Magistrate John Hawthorne, accusers Abigail Williams and Ann Putnam say the ghost, or specter of Bridget Bishop, is attacking them. Bridget tells the magistrate she has nothing to do with the girl's torments. Bridget Bishop is found guilty and hangs on June 10th. She's the first accused.
I think she's a bunch of little dumb girls.
Exactly. I think we studied this.
Wait, there's a bunch of dumb girls?
I think what? Okay.
All the girls, because there was a bunch of little girls accusing them.
And I think it's called power of suggestion. Is what was happening basically. Because so much people are like, oh my gosh, this happening, or it could have just been that it was little girls wanting attention.